Chapter 5, No one understands green tea better than me. Sunday, June 3rd, clear sky. Today is a new day. My sister Esther and I live together very harmoniously. She is a beautiful girl, can talk happily with my parents, sometimes even makes them laugh out loud. Since she came, my family has been filled with happiness, joy, and laughter. Even the atmosphere is filled with joy. I love my sister, but it seems like she doesn't like me. In order to make her happy, I gave her my favorite doll Annabelle. Annabelle is a lively and kind girl. I believe that Annabelle can become my sister's good friend, and can convey my love to her. In short, today is also a happy day. I love my sister, Esther, and I will forever be a happy family. Siddle's diary. Esther clings to Kelson and plays with Ray. During this time Siddle cannot approach her parents. She played games in the living room until she was tired, so she put the computer away and prepared to go upstairs, but unexpectedly saw a white figure flying quickly past the corner on the second floor. That thing looked like a little girl, her dirty hair reaching her waist, wearing a white dress, and in the blink of an eye, she disappeared into Esther's room. Siddle, eyes wide open JPG. Could it be Annabelle? It seemed that she couldn't stay on the second floor anymore. The materialism that Siddle had believed in for many years was broken in the blink of an eye. She quickly turned around, her face expressionless, preparing to go downstairs to continue listening to her older sister's drama, but as soon as she turned her head, she saw a pale face behind her. Siddle, sister. According to her conditioned reaction, she unconsciously took a step back. Esther raised her head to look at her, her gray pupils staring deeply at her sister. Siddle had another kind of illusion. It seemed like she was wrapped around by the cold gaze of a terrifying creature. That thing was staring at her with its eyes searching for prey. Esther stared at her. Siddle saw Esther still standing on the stairs. She squinted her eyes, then smiled sweetly and pulled her sister up. Are you here to play with me? Esther seemed to still not used to Siddle's habit of using her hands and feet. She was easily pulled upstairs. Her expression was angry, intending to push Siddle's hand away. But it was useless. Although Siddle's strength was not great, he took the opportunity to grab her wrist, gently caressed it, and innocently asked, "Sister, why did you tie the silk ribbon here?" The charming little girl pursed her lips, her eyes full of disgust swept over everything. It's still so old and tattered. When Siddle touched the other person's wrist, she clearly felt Esther's entire body stiffen, but she wasn't afraid at all. She didn't care that Esther was angrily shouting for her to stop. She continued to smile and reach for the little girl's neck. Seeing the brown-haired girl's pupils clearly dilate, Siddle originally wanted to provoke her sister. Seeing her react so strongly, she suddenly became a little curious about what exactly was under this layer of silk. Whoosh! A sound of breaking Siddle's hand away. The little girl angrily grabbed Siddle's hand that was trying to reach her neck. Siddle only felt her wrist numb, surprised by Esther's strength, couldn't help but say resentfully, "It hurts. Be gentle. Listen, if you dare to touch me again." Esther was so angry that she lost all her image, now looking like a wild beast out of control. Her eyes were bloodshot, the veins on her neck were bulging, but the person who was targeted by her anger, Siddle, suddenly narrowed her eyes and smiled, gently turning around. Siddle leaned back. Esther was stunned, unconsciously let go of her hand, immediately realized that something was wrong, reached out to pull the person back, but it was too late. The little girl stood there, momentarily dazed as she watched the little girl carefully hug the head of the deer and roll down. After falling to the ground, she quickly let go of the head, made a pose, and started crying. Hoo hoo hoo. Siddle wasn't faking it. When she fell, it really hurt a bit. Without even being prepared, tears automatically fell. While crying, she looked at Esther standing there, frozen in place. It seemed like she had never encountered this situation before. The stairs were very close to the living room. When Siddle cried out in pain, Kelson and Ray both heard it. Now that she was crying, her parents had already rushed over. As soon as the two of them arrived, they saw this scene. Their 7-year-old daughter was pitifully kneeling on the ground, sobbing, pulling her sleeve to wipe her tears, and staggering as she tried to stand up on her own. The other person was taller, at least a head taller than her, Esther, her face expressionless, standing arrogantly on the stairs. Ray was shocked, quickly ran over to hug Siddle, and asked worriedly, "Siddle, are you okay?" Kelson frowned, pursed his lips, and looked up at Esther on the stairs with a dignified gaze. "What happened to you two?" Esther was stunned, and was about to open her mouth to explain, but was interrupted by the little girl downstairs, who was sobbing in panic. Siddle, her face covered in tears, pitifully raised her head from Ray's arms, awkwardly pulling on her father's sleeve, revealing half of her small, fair arm, but there was a blue bruise on her wrist. She stammered, "Mom and Dad, don't ask anymore. I fell down there by myself, it has nothing to do with you." "Oh my God," Ray discovered the mark on Siddle's hand, and cried out, her eyes filled with heartache, "Honey, what happened to your hand?" This time, even the usually gentle Kelson was angry. Esther's intuition warned her that something was wrong. The little girl had discovered Siddle's intentions, and could only try her best to act innocent to hide the anger in her heart, intending to shed a few tears to gain sympathy, but was once again interrupted by Siddle. "I'm sorry, don't blame you." Her voice was childish and whining, seemingly weak and scared, her eyes were filled with tears as she raised her head. "It's all my fault, it's my fault. If I didn't want to help you wash the silk, you wouldn't be so angry." She sobbed, feeling like she was about to run out of tears. She quickly turned her head to look at Esther, and said with the remaining choked voice, "Sister, I'm sorry, it's just that I saw that your silk was so old and tattered, and you didn't take it off when you slept in the summer, and it would smell when you sweat, so I was planning to help you take it off and wash it." Siddle maintained her aggrieved expression and continued to chop, clearly seeing the person on the stairs trembling slightly. She must have been provoked to the point of trembling. Kelson suddenly picked Siddle up from Ray's arms. "Ray, I'll take Siddle to the hospital." Ray quickly stood up, anxiously chasing after her. "I'll go with you." Kelson carried Siddle out of the villa, while Ray looked at Esther standing upstairs in confusion. "You stay home." Siddle smugly buried her face in Kelson's arms. She had grown up with all kinds of palace dramas. In this country where fighting and cursing only happened face to face, what could Esther have to fight her? In the villa. Her white-eyed face was hidden in her brown curly hair, her whole body was trembling, gritting her teeth. She angrily scolded Siddle, "You bitch. How dare you trick me?" Esther angrily kicked the wooden stairs, her chest heaving violently. She had never been so wronged. To her, being framed could be considered extremely humiliating. Of the families who had adopted her before, she was the one in a weak position, the one who received everyone's sympathy and love. Originally, it wouldn't be long before she would have all of Kelson's love. Those who didn't love her were all dead, and no one would guard against a quiet and obedient girl like her anymore. Although she wasn't a little girl, according to calculations, she was already 33 years old this year. Esther's fangs bit deeply into her lower lip until it bled. "Damn bastard," she muttered, her heart filled with hatred. She didn't rush to take revenge, but returned to her room. As soon as she entered, she saw the doll that bitch had given her. The smile on Annabelle's face seemed to be mocking her, and the last thread of reason in Esther's head snapped. She became violent, grabbed Annabelle's pigtails and threw them to the ground. In her anger, she pushed all the books on the shelf over, lifted her foot and kicked the shabby doll that fell on the ground, and broke the glass cup on the table with a swipe of her hand. The room echoed with wild, ferocious screams. Broken glass, the mixture of fresh blood and water flowing to the ground, wetting Annabelle's dress lying in the corner. Esther sat on the ground, slowly calming down. She turned her head, suddenly seeing the pictures plastered all over the wall. In the hospital. There are no scratches on her body, not even a single tear. The doctor took off his glasses to wipe them, smiling kindly at the couple surrounding her. "You two said she fell from the upper floor. It seems that this child's sense of self-protection is very good." "Then what about this one?" Kelson pointed to the bruise on Siddle's wrist. "Is this one okay too?" The doctor thought for a moment and said, "Fortunately everyone arrived in time, otherwise this one would have disappeared." Siddle was asked by her parents all the way to the hospital. She had reason to suspect that this strangely acting doctor had a good grasp of the situation. Kelson and Ray carried Siddle out of the clinic. In the hospital corridor, Siddle held her parents tightly. Kelson squatted down and looked straight at her. His gentle brown eyes looked at her. "Siddle, do you have something to tell us?" Ray touched Siddle's head. As Siddle's parents, they understood their daughter better than anyone else. That's why after Siddle fell down the stairs they were so worried. Their first reaction was to believe their daughter's words. But as rational adults, they later discovered something was wrong. Siddle's expression at that time was completely out of character for her. "I think Esther has a problem." Siddle spoke frankly, telling everything she discovered, the suspicious thing about the silk ribbon that Esther had never taken off and the scary paintings on the wall. After she finished saying all that, her parents clearly hesitated and glanced at each other. "Siddle," Kelson looked straight into her eyes and said seriously, "this doubt is not a small matter. Before your parents can trust you, can you promise me that you are not deliberately harming your sister because you are jealous of your new sister who will steal your parents' attention?" "I can promise." Siddle looked straight at Kelson without reservation. He nodded, showing that he understood. He said, "I will call the orphanage to ask about Esther's background. If you suspect her, then we'll investigate her background." Siddle remembered her parents saying that Esther was a girl born in Russia, then adopted by an American family and followed them to America. "Dad, don't you like Esther a lot?" Siddle suddenly remembered something and asked. The relationship between Kelson and Esther had always been very good. Siddle had observed that in front of Kelson, Esther always looked shy. "Yes, my dear." Kelson was silent for a moment, then looked at Ray. "But you know why our family adopted that girl?" "I agreed to love her because Ray needed a child." Siddle was stunned.